Have you ever found yourself, doing something for your health? Something you've just always known to be true. And then you stop and wonder, wait, is this actually accurate?
Mm-hmm.
Like religiously drinking 8 glasses of water a day,
Right.
or maybe avoiding eggs because you're worried about your heart. It's pretty fascinating how many of these health truths we've kind of inherited. So our mission today is a deep dive into those widely accepted beliefs, the ones that, well, might be more myth than fact.
Exactly. And what's truly striking here is how deeply ingrained some of these ideas are. They persist for generations, even when the science has actually moved on. So we've pulled together a compelling look at 10 common health myths, ones that have been pretty thoroughly debunked by research. The goal really is to help you cut through all that widespread misinformation that floats around so you can make, well, more informed choices for yourself.
Think of this as your shortcut to being well-informed, designed specifically for you. We're going to explore what the latest research actually says, so you can separate fact from fiction, without getting totally overwhelmed. Get ready for some real aha moments. Okay, let's kick things off with a real classic, the 8 glasses of water a day rule. I mean, I know for me, if I'm not consciously tracking it, sometimes I do feel a bit sluggish. So how do we square that feeling with the idea that just drinking when you're thirsty is enough? Is there like a magic number we really need to hit?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it comes up all the time. The research suggests that, well, for most healthy people, simply listening to your body, your natural thirst cues, that's perfectly fine. Your body's actually amazing at regulating hydration. And it's not just about plain water either. Think about water-rich foods, soups, fruits, vegetables. They add a lot to your fluid intake. Plus, other drinks like juice, tea, even coffee in moderation, they all count. Now, there are definitely times when your needs go up. For sure. Like if your urine is consistently dark yellow, or maybe you're not going regularly, or if you're very active or live somewhere really hot, then yeah, absolutely, you probably should consciously drink more. But for everyday life, it's less about a strict number and more about tuning into those internal signals.
That's genuinely interesting. So it's more intuitive, less rigid rule following. That really changes how I think about something I just, well, always accepted. Okay, next up. For years, the humble egg yolk was basically painted as the villain, right? Especially for heart health, all about cholesterol. But dietary advice shifts so much. What's the latest thinking on this one? Are eggs really that bad for your heart?
Well, good news for breakfast lovers. Omelet fans, you can indeed rejoice. Basically, eating 1 or 2 eggs a day doesn't seem to significantly raise heart disease risk in healthy people. Yes, yolks contain cholesterol, that's true. But our bodies are actually pretty good at managing their own cholesterol levels. For most people, the cholesterol you get from a couple of eggs isn't nearly as big a deal as the overall mix of fats in your diet, especially, saturated and trans fats from other foods.
Right, the bigger picture.
Exactly. And eggs actually pack a nutritional punch. They've got good stuff like omega-3 fatty acids. We know those can help lower inflammation and are generally good for cardiovascular health. So far from being bad, they can actually be a positive part of a balanced diet.
Wow, that's a huge relief for many, I bet. It really shows how nutrition science is moving beyond just focusing on single nutrients, doesn't it?
It really does.
Okay, here's one that causes a lot of anxiety. You hear it whispered about. The idea that antiperspirants, the stuff you put under your arms, could somehow lead to breast cancer? Is there any fire to that smoke?
It's completely understandable why people worry about this. It sounds plausible on the surface. But the science is actually very clear here. The National Cancer Institute states there's no evidence connecting antiperspirants or deodorants with breast cancer. The theory, was that chemicals get absorbed, maybe build up in breast tissue, make tumors more likely, but study after study has just not found any link, no scientific support for it.
So you can literally don't sweat it. Okay, that's good to know. It's so important to separate those anxieties from the actual scientific facts.
Absolutely crucial.
I definitely remember my grandma saying this. Don't go out with wet hair, you'll catch your death of cold.
Yeah.
Or just the general idea that getting chilled makes you sick.
Yeah.
Any truth to that old chestnut?
Yes, the wet hair warning. Classic. But no, Grandma was mistaken on this one. Spending time in the cold air itself doesn't make you sick. Colds and the flu are caused by viruses, not temperature. Actually, there was this interesting study. They exposed healthy men to temps just above freezing, and guess what? They actually saw an increase in their immune system's virus-fighting activity.
Well, really, the opposite.
Yeah. The real risk factor for catching a cold isn't being cold outside, it's being indoors. Especially in winter when we all huddle inside. That's where viruses pass easily from person to person in enclosed spaces.
That's a fascinating twist. So it's proximity to germs we need to worry about, not the actual chill. Definitely challenges a belief I think many of us grew up hearing.
Hmm.
All right, what about multivitamins? Lots of us dutifully pop one every day. We think it's like a nutritional safety net, right?
Yeah.
Especially if our diet isn't always perfect. Is it truly essential for most people?
Well, this is a bit more nuanced. Researchers don't all agree on whether a multivitamin can really truly make up for nutrients missing from your diet. The best way, the most effective way to get your nutrients, it's eating a varied diet. Lots of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, healthy oils, that kind of thing. Because whole foods give you this whole symphony of nutrients, fiber, other compounds that work together. A pill just can't replicate that complex interaction.
Okay, so food first.
Food first, ideally. But there are important exceptions, absolutely. You should definitely take a multivitamin if your doctor specifically tells you to. Maybe you have a deficiency or a particular condition. And critically, pregnant individuals need to take folic acid. That's non-negotiable. It significantly lowers the risk of certain birth defects.
Right. What really stands out there is the emphasis back on whole foods over just taking a pill. It's about a whole approach to nutrition, not just patching gaps.
Precisely.
Let's talk breakfast. Often called the most important meal of the day. And supposedly key for weight loss.
Yeah.
That's almost like gospel for some people. True or false?
Breakfast. Yeah, this one definitely needs some nuance. It's not a simple yes or no. For some people, eating breakfast really does help with managing weight. It can keep hunger pangs away, maybe stop them from grabbing random snacks later or overeating at lunch. That makes sense. But it's not a universal law that works for everyone trying to lose weight.
Okay, so not everyone.
Not everyone. For instance, there was a study at Cornell University. They looked at people who didn't eat breakfast and found they didn't actually overcompensate by eating huge lunches and dinners. In fact, they ended up eating about 400 fewer calories over the whole day. So the conclusion was, for some healthy folks, skipping breakfast might actually help them shed pounds. It really boils down to your individual body, your metabolism, your habits. No one-size-fits-all rule.
So it really depends. It's about knowing your own body and what works for your energy, your hunger cues, not a blanket prescription.
Exactly right. Personalization is key.
Okay, let's talk about something slightly gross, maybe, but something we all look at when we're sick, the color of our mucus. Green or yellow snot. The common wisdom is that means a bacterial infection, means you need antibiotics. How reliable is that?
Right, the mucus color chart. It's a common diagnostic tool in bathrooms everywhere. But unfortunately, the color alone just can't replace a proper lab test for a diagnosis. Yes, some studies show green or yellow mucus is slightly more common with certain bacterial infections. Slightly, but it's definitely not a sure sign you have one. Or, more importantly, that you need antibiotics. Think about it. A common cold, which is viral, can easily turn your mucus green as your immune system fights it off. And you can have a bacterial sinus infection with clear mucus sometimes.
So you can't just tell by looking. That really drives home why you need a doctor's diagnosis, not just a glance at your tissue before demanding antibiotics.
Absolutely. Self-diagnosis based on color isn't reliable here.
Okay, the classic post-birthday party scene. Kids bouncing off the walls, parents are always like, it's the sugar. Is sugar really the villain making kids hyper?
The sugar rush myth. It's incredibly persistent. But research pretty consistently shows that sugar doesn't actually cause kids to act out or hurt their schoolwork or make them unable to focus. The physiological link just isn't supported by the evidence. When you see kids hyped up after sugary treats, think about the context. It's far more likely the excitement of the party, the friends, the presents, the special occasion itself that's fueling that energy.
So it's the party, not the cake.
Largely, yes. And there's a big psychological piece too. Many parents believe sugar causes hyperactivity, so they expect it. That expectation can unconsciously prime them to notice any energetic behavior after sweets and blame the sugar. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy almost, even if other factors are the real cause.
Wow, what's fascinating there is the power of expectation. How perception can kind of override the physiological reality for you and your family.
It's a great example of that, yeah.
Okay, public restrooms. That universal cringe when you face an uncovered toilet seat. The immediate germ fear. How risky is it, really?
Yeah.
And what should we actually be worried about in there?
Right, the dreaded public toilet seat. Understandable fear, but you might be surprised. The seed itself is usually relatively clean. Seriously. Most harmful bacteria don't survive long on those surfaces, and simple skin contact isn't usually how nasty bugs are transmitted anyway. The real germ hotspots in a public restroom, often it's the door handles going in and out, and the bathroom doors themselves, and the floors. Those surfaces tend to harbor things like E. coli, norovirus, the stomach flu bug, and regular flu virus.
Not the seed.
Not usually the main culprit, no. So, practical advice, maybe use a paper towel to grab door handles, and definitely always use hand sanitizer or wash your hands really well with soap and water afterwards. That's the key step.
So the plot twist is, worry less about the seat, worry more about everything else you touch.
Yeah.
That completely rearranges my mental checklist for public restrooms now.
Good way to think about it.
All right, finally, let's tackle the satisfying pop of cracking your knuckles or your neck. Someone nearby always says it. Stop that, you'll get arthritis. Is that long-held belief actually true?
Another absolute classic myth, and thankfully also debunked. Cracking your joints does no harm. Well, beyond maybe annoying the people around you. That popping sound. It's actually just a gas bubble nitrogen, mostly forming rapidly in the synovial fluid between your bones and then collapsing or popping. There have been lots of studies, including a famous long-term one where a doctor cracked the knuckles on only one hand for decades, and the results are clear. It doesn't cause arthritis, doesn't play a role in it.
So no actual damage.
No damage from the cracking itself. So if you enjoy it, and importantly, if there's no pain when you do it, crack on. Now, the crucial caveat is this. If you feel regular pain or sharp pain, or if there's swelling when you crack your joints, that is different. That's a sign you should see your doctor. It could indicate an underlying issue.
Okay, that's really reassuring for knuckle crackers everywhere. The takeaway is if it feels okay and doesn't hurt, you're probably fine. Don't let the myth scare you.
Exactly.
Wow. We've really covered some ground today. We've seen how many things we just sort of assume are true about our health.
Yeah.
But they aren't actually backed up by the current science. From how much water to drink, to eggs, to cracking knuckles, common wisdom often lags behind the research, doesn't it? It's amazing how many of these started maybe with a grain of truth or old science and just stuck around.
It really is. And if you connect this to the bigger picture, it just highlights how easily myths can take root and persist, sometimes for generations. It really underscores the power and the importance of actually looking at the data, the evidence, so you can make genuinely informed choices for yourself, rather than just going along with what you've always heard. That process of questioning, of investigating, that's how we really move forward in understanding our health.
It really makes you think, though. What other facts do you hold dear that might be ready for their own deep dive? How many things in your daily routine are based more on tradition, or maybe just hearsay, than on solid evidence? Something to ponder. We definitely encourage you to continue your own journey of discovery.